24th. Again, welcome everyone to the April 24th meeting of the County of San Diego. Sorry, different meeting there. Citizens Law Enforcement Review Board, welcome. We are going to start with roll call. Our secretary is not here, so I will take roll. I am here. Vice Chair Pintar.
Present.
Pastor Spriggs, absent. Andrew Hayes, absent. Dr. Brown.
Here.
Nadia Keen-Ayub is online. Nadia, do you
Present.
are you the only person there? Is there anybody there over 18?
Not over 18, no.
Is that,
She's just basis.
I'm sorry. Oh, could you please state the reason that you are virtual?
I do not have childcare.
Okay, thank you, Council. Bonnie Kank.
I'm here.
Thank you. Ariana Federico Mondragon. Not here. Mr. Ware. Here. And G.I. Wilson.
Here.
2, 3, 4. We have 6. We do have a quorum. Thank you. Can you pass that down too? Thank you. Okay, so we're here tonight for consideration of CLERB support of Senate Bill 519, 2023, related to local detention facilities and authorization. Can you hear me okay?
You don't
Could
get
be
that
that.
in publication.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like this. Can you hear me now? No. Okay, thank you. I don't think so either, but okay. Let me know if you can't hear me. I will try to speak up a little bit. Detention facilities authorization of executive offer to convey such support on behalf of CLERB. I will now open it up to public. I would like to remind you that I'd like everybody to be able to have the chance to speak, but I am going to limit it if it gets too long, and want to make sure that when you speak, you have that one time. Please you have that opportunity. Please include all your comments during that one time. And with that, shall we go to online first, or do you want to go public? Let's do online. Val?
Yes, we have one request to speak. Leslie Crawford, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Your time starts now.
Okay, thank you. I'm with Saving Lives in Custody, and I would like to start off by listing some data from the attorneys in the Coleman case, which is an ongoing federal class action lawsuit about California treatment of inmates with mental illness. In their data of April of 2020, they estimated 1 in 8 inmates had diagnosed mental health illness. By May of 2022, it increased to 1 in 3. In 2011, the Independent Office of Inspector General with oversight over the California Department of Corrections and Rehab was stripped of its oversight authority. Since 2018, that California department has had 67 suicides, with an 81% described as poorly handled. This problem is better solved at the county level. County health services should be getting dollars from the 2004 Mental Health Services Act, and they need mental health personnel much more in the sheriff's department. CLERB has to have the teeth to follow through with enforcing these findings, and SEIU and the sheriff's unions need to understand that failure of workers to protect those with mental health diagnosis, it's not okay. There's no excuses, not enough staff. You need to keep your eyes open. I thank you for your work, and I thank you for my time to speak. My son, Raymond Vogelman, died last October 5th of 2022. His autopsy is still sealed. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Dr. Darwin Fishman. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you,
Darwin Fishman, he, him, his, Racial Justice Coalition of San Diego. Thank you, and thank you for having this special meeting. And I definitely want to encourage you to take a strong position in support of SB 519 from Atkins. And in some respects, this is what we've been looking for, and we've been talking about at your meetings, of course, for many months. One of the things, of course, it connects directly to the state auditor's report. Of course, not just the sheriff's department was criticized in that report, but also CLERB in your oversight role. This will add another piece to it in the sense that local government should also be responsible and accountable for what takes place in the jail. And as we all know, as you talking with you directly, Paul Parker, and we were in complete agreement about this. It's very frustrating when we kept going to the supervisors and they kept saying the sheriff department's independent. There's nothing we can do. We can pass this bill, we can pass this recommendations, but it has no strength. It has no teeth. And we've been going back and forth with the supervisors and local government here with no success. And we still hit that record mark with the 20 deaths last year. And we're obviously continuing to still have problems as we see this year. So I'm hoping that this will help part of the solution for us on a local level, as well as throughout the state, where there are conditions in the jails that are not just horrific and horrible, but that local elected officials have not been able to have an impact on by doing things like resolutions, by talking to things like the sheriff's department and those that are responsible for it. Certainly, you heard from families, impacted families on a regular basis. This is really needless. So many of the horrific conditions, it can be addressed. There are better ways to run the jails. We know that from other jurisdictions that are doing a much better job here in San Diego, don't have the same death rate. And definitely this legislation would give the opportunity for supervisors, for local body to decide, well, we've tried all of our options, we've exhausted all of it. We're in concert with the local entities and saying that we need a more drastic step. We need to take control of their jails. So I encourage you to support this legislation, to do it formally. Thank you again for this meeting tonight. And hopefully you'll be able to hear more members of the community that have been calling for this, and we'll also be able to speak directly to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Robin Sales. Are you there?
Yes. Hi,
Hi.
I'm
Your
Robin
mic is
Sales. Showing Up for Racial Justice, North County's new campaign, Safe Outcomes for People with Behavioral Health and Other Disabilities, is focused on advocating for those with invisible disabilities, including mental illness, substance abuse disorders, and neurological conditions who are over-policed in the community, leading to unnecessary arrests. We are very concerned about the use of incarceration rather than treatment. Many of these folks have been seriously misdiagnosed, mistreated, neglected, or have died as a result of lack of appropriate care. Senate Bill 519 deserves your support so that the Board of Supervisors and CLERB can augment its oversight powers if the San Diego Sheriff's Department refuses to change its ways. I believe that the county has a responsibility to remake the jail system to be more humane, to update its technologies and facilities, and to train jail staff so that the carceral system is not deadly. The primary provider of behavioral health services should be clinicians and behavioral health workers, not the sheriff's department. Over $60 million has been paid out in civil lawsuits in the last 10 years. That alone is an indicator of a broken system. I ultimately have hope that the San Diego Sheriff's Department, Behavioral Health Services, and the Board of Supervisors can work together to improve the entire system of care. The UT article last week gave me great compassion for all of those who are involved in interacting with those with invisible disabilities. And I believe that with all the tireless advocates and activists, we can have a much better system. Please support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair, we have no more requests to speak online.
Okay, thank you. Do we have for the public here?
We do, yes.
Could you please? Thank you.
Yes. First, Zoo Quinn.
I'm very glad to turn on the mic.
It's on. No,
Okay, I wasn't close enough.
There you go.
Okay. I'm here. My name is Sue Quinn. I worked for CLERB when it opened in the first 5.5 years. I worked for the probation department for 20 years before that. And I've worked in and for NACOL since 1997. So I bring you my experience. In addition, I will tell you my brother, 2.5 years younger than I, is the kind of person who the article in the UT, the whole section on the mentally ill was talking about, and opening that section up and seeing the pictures and the narratives were shocking. I support without hesitation California Senate Bill 519, 2023, and support the hope that CLERB will authorize your executive officer to convey CLERB's support. These violations in the jails, in probation, although less so, and on the streets are human rights violations. We call them civil rights violations in the US. We should be calling them human rights violations. I want to thank each of you for your work. I know how time consuming it is, how intense it is, how many hours you spend reading and analyzing the complaints and the death investigations. The recent UT articles, in addition to the one on the whole section on 72 hours in the mental health system, the one in the past couple of days on the $9 million settlement for the 3-day, just incredible supervision of an inmate, and she had a preventable paralytic stroke and is no longer able to walk and barely talk. She's in her 40s. The second issue I want to mention is the article on the probation department and its inability to provide the state mandated rehab services to over, as of today, 20 wards who have been sent back to San Diego from the state. So there's so much work for you to do, so much work for everybody in the state of California. And these cases show, these newspaper cases, and the UT has been doing a great job, show how great the problems
I'm
are.
sorry, Sue, your time has
Okay.
expired.
Thank you.
Thank
all.
you. Next, we have Sabrina Weddle.
Hello, how are you guys today? My name is Sabrina Weddle. I'm here to represent my brother Saxon Rodriguez, who died July 20th, 2021. I'm also here with the Saving Lives in Custody campaign. I'm in support of Senator Tony Atkins' bill, SB 519. I feel it is important that an outside government agency is able to oversee the daily operations of the San Diego sheriffs. My hope is that the bill will pass so that additional oversight of policy and procedure can be mandated in the San Diego jail so that no more drugs enter the facility, that we can have more transparency, less deaths, more mental health, and that there is more medical assistance for inmates. I also want to bring to light that since we've been here from the last meeting, we did have another inmate jail death Monday, April 17th, I believe. That would be the third death this year. Even though we have not had as many jail deaths as we have had in the past 2 years, 3 is still one too many. That means there's going to be another family here with us speaking. there needs to be change. The change needs to start with somebody overseeing the San Diego sheriffs, because it's clear that they're not doing their job. We've heard that they've paid out $60 million already. That's not even including the cases that are still pending a trial. Because I'm pretty sure more taxpayer dollars will be cashed out for those people. And as we see more evidence come to light of the San Diego sheriffs continuously not doing their job and not being held accountable, we're going to continue to see more deaths. Nobody has been held accountable yet. We're getting less and less back for when we have to do taxes because we have to pay out for the deaths. Yet we have to pay out of pocket for our funerals, for the expenses of having to be here. And again, we want change, and I'm in support with this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have David Settles.
Yes. Hello. Yeah. So my name is David Settles, brother of Matthew Settles, who passed away in George Bailey this past August. I'm here with the Saving Lives in Custody campaign. I'd just like to express my support for the bill SB 15 by Senator Atkins. I do believe, the additional oversight by local government would have helped my brother. My brother had schizophrenia. He did not belong at all in the jail, but he was put there. He should have been in the mental health facility, but he, was not treated in the jails. We knew it was a bad situation for him. He was assaulted in the jail. He should have never been there. He should have been treated. And I do believe that the SB 515 will help make needed changes so that this doesn't happen to other families. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Yusuf Miller.
Good evening. My name is Yusuf Miller with the North County Equity and Justice Coalition, the Saving Lives in Custody campaign. And I'm, excuse me, and I'm here with family members who have suffered loss of life in custody. And we are in full support of SB 519. 519 has a big if in it. We get a lot of pushback from 519 from various institutions, various organizations, thinking that 519 is a way to separate the process from the actual workers who are doing the jobs. But that is acceptable to families who have lost lives in custody and families who have potential loss of life in custody. So we expect for you to look at it in the holistic point, not so much that we're hurting feelings of people who are already running the jails, but we need an outcome that people can survive from. This oversight is an oversight of elected, selected people by the Board of Supervisors. The supervisors themselves, some people don't understand, the supervisors themselves will not be doing the oversight themselves. They will be electing a body to oversee the jails if the sheriff's department doesn't fix the violations of constitutional rights and federal rights of human beings that are in custody. This is the if. So we're working towards that. And if they don't want the if to come into effect, then they need to work towards maintaining and reforming this system. There are reforms that are going into process. Great. We need more of it. There are many reforms that have come from this body here that I'm speaking to that have not been implemented. And we're looking for more of those reforms because those reforms could possibly save lives. The bill also supports accountability and transparency, which a lot of these families didn't have even up to today for some families. And the BSCC, which we hope reconstitutes itself to make sure that all those people who are staffed on the BSCC, that they're not all law enforcement officers, that they constitute the public, non-law enforcement background public to also constitute the BSCC. And if this bill goes through, the people who would be appreciative of that is the Gilbert Gills, the Omar Arroyos, the Kevin Mills, the Saxon Rodriguez, the Elisa Cernas, the Matthew Settles, the Raybo Vogelman, and all of those who have lost their lives and their families. But we also have people who are still alive in custody that we're worried about. Javon Jackson is still alive and he's having mental health crises and we're concerned about his survival in jail. His mother is here with us now. Jeremy Smith, who has mental health crises, who's still alive right now. The decision we make right now could save those lives and many others that we don't know about. Yusef Miller, Saving Lives in Custody campaign.
Thank you. Chair, we have 2 requests to speak online. Okay. Tom Packard, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Your time starts now.
Yeah, okay. Tom Packard, showing up for racial justice, North County. I strongly encourage you to support SB 519 with reference to the reasons for establishing a Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. It's clear that the current department has shown a disproportionate increase in deaths in jails, clear deficiencies in protecting public health and safety, and inadequacies in some operation of the jails, including not screening all employees for drugs. Sheriff Martinez has had ample time to demonstrate visionary and impactful leadership in articulating the need for systems change in the jails, but I haven't yet seen evidence that she has done so. While some encouraging but incremental changes in areas including behavioral health treatment have been initiated, these don't adequately address the root causes of problems regarding jail deaths and treatment of people with behavioral health and other disabilities. The sheriff not fulfilling her promise to release full internal reports when there's an in-custody death is just one example of her lack of commitment to systems change. This bill simply gives boards of supervisors the option of developing a new department. While the bill's being considered, the sheriff has some time to actually make the changes on her own if she's committed to doing so. If she continues to lag on progress while this bill passes through the legislature, please continue to insist that the sheriff implement all of your recommendations that so far haven't been implemented, and specifically document plans for systems change to address these issues. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you. Next up, we have Paloma.
Hello, yes. Hi. Do you hear me?
Yes, your time starts now.
Okay. I thank you, board members, for letting me speak today. I am with the Saving Lives in Custody campaign, the North County Equity Justice Coalition. I back this bill that we need so desperately, the SB 519. We need more oversights. Obviously, we've been stating this already, myself for 3 years and others been stating this even longer. We need this bill to pass, and I would love to have you guys to support this. We need more oversights in the jails. Tom Packer had just mentioned, all these promises from the San Diego Sheriff Department. They obviously have to have their arm twisted behind their back to make them do anything that would be right, not only for impacted families, but sorry to say, for future impacted families. We need people to be held accountable. We need other people we need the Board of State of Community Correction to help change some of their policies, some of their missions, the way they have the staff take care of inmates, including the youth that's in the juvenile halls, and also the probation department, I believe. But we need justice and to get people to be held accountable for the things that they are lacking to do for our loved ones. And I thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We have no more requests to speak.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Parker, you have some that you would like to read into the record?
Thank you, Chair Delaney. I have 6 requests to be read into the record, and I will start with, bear with me, Dmitry Potemkin, resident of Oceanside, who states, "No powerful organization should be permitted to police itself with no accountability to the communities it affects. This certainly includes the police. Independent oversight is vital in all areas of law enforcement, including corrections and detention. Currently, the San Diego Board of Supervisors has too little say over county jail facilities, but Senator Atkins's bill would give them the authority needed to better protect people in custody. I urge you to vote today to have CLERB's executive officer convey your full support for SB 519 to California's elected leaders. Thank you for your kind attention." Next up, we have from Rick Broniev from Vista. As a community activist, stand up for racial justice member and voter, I urge CLERB members to fully support Senate Bill 519. In light of Sheriff Martinez going back on her promise to release full internal reports when there is an in-custody death, the required release of such records as proposed in this bill is vital to our community's continued detention facility oversight and accountability efforts. Thank you for addressing this issue with the urgency it deserves with tonight's special meeting and your votes in support. The level of in-custody deaths in San Diego is unacceptable and shameful. Next, we have from Barbara Walker from Solana Beach. As a citizen of San Diego County and a member of North County standing up for racial justice, I urge you to support Senate Bill 519 because it will require the release of full records for in-custody deaths. It is vital to the functioning of CLERB to have the full records in order to review these cases. The sheriff is not living up to her promise to release these records, so a law is urgently required. It is not acceptable that San Diego has so many deaths in our jails, and it is a current and ongoing problem. It is the responsibility of CLERB to reveal the details of these cases and help find a solution, and SB 519 will help make this possible. Next, we have from Dale Birchby. My name is Dale Birchby. I'm a North County resident and a member of Showing Up for Racial Justice. My apologies, Showing Up for Racial Justice, North County. I urge CLERB members to fully support Senate Bill 519. County elected officials need all the tools they can to supervise the sheriff's department, preventing custody deaths and improve jail conditions. Sheriff Martinez is going back on her promise to release full internal reports when there is an in-custody death and showed no willingness to take other actions, such as daily drug screening for deputies, nurses, and support personnel entering the facilities to reduce jail deaths. The current situation is immoral and shameful. We need to press the San Diego Sheriff's Department to address it with more urgency. Currently, the San Diego Board of Supervisors has too little say over the county jails. Please vote today to support SB 519. Thank you for tonight's special meeting and your votes and voices in support. Next, we have one more, I believe. Bear with me. Deidre McLeod. My name is Deidre McLeod, and I'm a constituent of Supervisor Joel Anderson, District 2. My pronouns are she, her. Right now, it feels like the only role San Diego County supervisors have with regard to our jails is to be a wallet, paying out repeated multi-million-dollar settlements to people whose loved ones are harmed or killed while in custody. Senate Bill 519 will change this dynamic, giving local elected officials a larger role in detention facility oversight. The bill will also require the public release of internal records related to in-custody incidents, an issue for which this board has repeatedly advocated, yet the sheriff has refused to do anything about. As it is so clearly, I apologize, as it so clearly aligns with your mission, I urge you to vote tonight in full support of SB 519. And I believe that, just bear with me for 1 minute to make sure I'm not missing anything. Those are the only comments I have to read into the record.
Okay, thank you. This is last call for anyone in public or online that would like to make a comment. Okay, I'm going to now close public comments, and I'm going to turn it to the board. And board.
I believe that he's supposed to commit.
Yes, yes. Mr. Parker, our executive officer, will give an overview.
Chair Delaney, thank you. Thank you for all those who have attended or attending in person and online. This is something that's it's very new for CLERB. CLERB has never taken this stance before to actively look at supporting a bill. If you recall, at our last meeting, one of our board members asked if that's something we could do after we gave an update on all the bills that seemed to be police related. This bill was not out there yet, but we have researched it and we know that we can, that CLERB can support and give the authority for me to communicate said support. So that's why we're here. That we believe that that SB 519, the reason that we want to bring this before the CLERB, really there are two reasons. Number one, much of the bill talks about, there are really two things it talks about, and I know the people in the public have already eloquently spoke about it, but if I may. Number one, it's to give the Board of Supervisors a tool to create a Department of Corrections that right now that law exists, but this says Department of Corrections in which an officer, an executive officer that is appointed as the person in charge of that Department of Corrections must have certain experience, specifically on how to run jails and whatnot. It also says that when the Board of Supervisors goes to create this office, that they must state why they want to create this independent office to take over the running of the jails. And finally, it says that the executive officer, if that were to happen, that executive officer would take the role of the sheriff and run the Department of Corrections to provide the services, as we talked about with folks in custody. One of the interesting things about it's not really related to the bill, but please know that in 1991, when CLERB was created, I know Ms. Quinn in the audience could attest to this, one of the things that was put in the charter was that if San Diego County ever creates a Department of Corrections, that CLERB would have the ability to provide oversight of that department as well. That was forethinking like 32 years ago. So that's about the Department of Corrections. That's what Senator Atkins would like to, is proposing. Number two, one of the things that this board has done repeatedly over the last 2 years is to, again, we don't advocate for people, we advocate for the facts, and we make recommendations to change policies. And the main thing that this board has done over the last 2 years, is to make policy recommendations about transparency, specifically about the relation of having records of folks who have died releasable, having family members kept in the loop during and after the investigations into their deaths. The Sheriff's Department, and to be clear, out of the recommendations that we made, the Sheriff's Department has accepted over 50% of those recommendations. Many of the ones pertaining to death they have. We all know the ones that they have not, and they have their reasons for doing that. And we also have 4 recommendations in front of the Sheriff's Department right now about the Critical Incident Review Board, the records of the Critical Incident Review Board. So we're waiting for responses to that. This bill would make, from my understanding of the bill and talking to the senator's staff members and whatnot, that would make the records pertaining to investigations of in-custody deaths, so deaths occurring in the detention facility, releasable. You'll notice that some of the verbiage in the bill, specifically subject officer and whatnot, that comes from us. That comes from the work that this board has been doing. It needs to be very clear that people are paying attention to what we're doing, and they have asked for us to look at this, the senator herself. So with that, that's the background. I am scheduled to go to Sacramento tomorrow morning and testify at 9 o'clock. I'm also scheduled to testify on Wednesday morning around 9 o'clock in reference to parts of this bill. And your support would make that obviously easier for me to do. But that's where we stand. And that's the overview of the bills and why we're here tonight, to be proactive. Chair Delaney.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Parker. All right. Do we have any comments from CLERB Board? Okay. Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, I'm very conflicted over this for several reasons. We have worked very hard to begin to hold the sheriff accountable. I'm not sure how we will hold the Board of Supervisors and their chairman accountable, other than making recommendations. But I've always heard someone's got to be held accountable and responsible. At this point, the sheriff still has opportunity to make change. We've had the assistant sheriff in here who's only been in position for months, who has made change. I'm not comfortable with saying we're going to pull the rug out from underneath you after we've been working with you to make some of these changes. Now, I'm all for the verbiage in there about the transparency. That is really great material in there. Another reason I'm conflicted is the supervisors have the ability to do this already. Why haven't they done it? I would like to hear from the supervisors why they haven't done it. Also, I'm very leery of state legislation because the state prison system was put into federal receivership because it couldn't take care of its inmates. And I'm not sure whether we really want to get involved with legislatures when their own prison system, parts of which are still under federal receivership. Am I making sense? So I'm conflicted over that. My heart breaks for the people who sit here and come and support us every week. But this has only been recently after we've been really working hard to take the sheriff to task. And with their support, I think we can still do it. And I think we ought to make the sheriff accountable and responsible. And I'm also wondering why we don't pass a law that does make the sheriff accountable and responsible. I've seen legislation, and I'm not sure how Senate Bill 519 bangs up against Senate Bill 1185, which has been passed, is on the books, which says a sheriff, not the sheriff's department. This is a sheriff can be subjected to oversight by a board. And I found the verbiage in that bill very, very interesting. So how does 1185 overlap with 519? I think we need to give the assistant sheriff, Adams Haidar, an opportunity to finish making the changes that she's come here and briefed us on. And in addition to that, it takes time. We've all had experiences with bureaucracy. And God only knows if I could stop the day of, the deaths in the jails, I would do it right now. But bureaucracies take time, whether it's city, state, county. It takes time. In addition to that, we have a responsibility to inspect jails. Where are we on that?
Answer your question and when you're finished.
Right. But we have had that responsibility for how long?
We've had it for 32 years.
Yeah. So talking about it, be accountable and responsible, we need to get on with it. And we need to do it. We need to do it locally. Now, I'm also worried about, and I'd like to get a analysis from county council about what kind of legal challenges could come up to this. What kind of complications are there in terms of jurisdiction? I'm also very, very concerned about what special trust and confidence and qualifications is going to result in creating another layer in county government. All right. Now, I can live with all of that. All right. If somebody can guarantee me that we won't be back to where we were 10, 15 years ago, that will be another layer, and then we'll be dealing with, and we're appointed by the supervisors, we'll be challenging and overseeing people that work directly for them. That could get complicated. I'm not sure how it works. The other thing is I'm concerned about how much is it going to cost? You add another layer. What does the finance of it look like? Do they pay for more people? Do they pay for experts? Do they pay for a retired warden to come here and then he creates a staff? And that money that was supposed to go for improving the conditions in the jails goes into paying personnel instead of infrastructure. The infrastructure, our jail system is wanting. The cameras in our jail system is wanting. In fact, we are wanting deputies. We are probably what, somewhere between 200 or 300 deputies short. So by kicking the ball at this point, and let me be very frank, I'm open to reconsidering this at any time, but I'm very conflicted and very uncomfortable about moving forward until we answer some of these other questions, because sometimes there are a lot of unintended consequences. So I'm more than happy to see Paul going to Sacramento, and I think he should go. And let people there know our concerns. And if we have the ability to hold people accountable and responsible, all right, then why don't we do it? Instead of creating another layer, creating another board, pass a law. And I think 1185 might give you some impetus for that. Pass a law to hold the sheriff accountable, even though he's an elected official. And, you know, and if we're going to do accountability and responsibility, it needs to be on a local level. And, okay, I know, having been on the jail committee, put a lot of time and effort in getting that back on the front burner. And then finally, once you put something in place, whether it's a city level, county level, state level, or even federal level, once you put a layer in place, an office in place, and even if that office does not perform, and I'm not sure how we would have any impact upon that individual, that preferred person, if they don't perform, because all we have is what, still recommendations we can send to the county. We don't have any real teeth, so we have to be influencers. And the way we influence is having people show up and bring their stories to us. We create this other layer and it proves to be, let's just say, not satisfactory. How do we eliminate that layer? How do we get rid of it? We all know that in government, we have hundreds, particularly in the federal government, of offices that are vestigial. In other words, they were there for a reason at one time. That reason has gone away, and we still have them. We have military bases that we don't need, and they're still around. So I can't, at this particular point in time, though, I would love to come back and revisit this, because there's so much good stuff in that bill, particularly as highlighted by Mr. Miller back there, Yusuf Miller. I would really like to see if we can get at least the records thing settled and get the transparency taken care of. And then we'll worry about the rest of it and let us do our job, and we let the sheriff do his job. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else? Vice Chair?
I do have additional questions and comments, but I wondered if Mr. Parker wanted to respond to some of the questions, or would you
Hold on,
would you
I'm not
prefer
sure. I want you to be able to respond to all of
to
them.
all of them at
Okay,
once?
yeah.
Okay, okay. I am not familiar with 1185. Mr. Parker, if you are, I would like you to maybe answer that question when you can. I don't know how to respond to your comment about that supervisors already having the authority to remove or hold the sheriffs accountable. I don't believe that is the case. They don't have the authority to do what this bill would allow them to do. This is my understanding is that
Read the board.
they do not have the authority to create a separate corrections board at the county.
That's how I read it, and Mr. Parker gave me that impression.
Yeah, they do.
So if
I
that's
don't
wrong,
believe that's right, because when I read this,
stand corrected.
my understanding of the bill and of the law currently is that the state law did allow a board of supervisors. And I think what's confusing is when you read this piece and it says the authority of the board of supervisors, it basically says that the boards of supervisors have the authority to create an independent board of corrections at the county level. But in 1993, there was an additional piece of legislation that basically paused with the law that is currently on the books. So my understanding, based on what I've read, and Mr. Parker, please correct me if I'm wrong, is that SB 519 removes the pause that was put into place by subsequent legislation. Is that correct, Paul?
That's my understanding. At this point, there's only one Department of Corrections in the state, and that's Napa County. That's it. And that had been in existence for a long time. But there are reasons now for this bill to do that, but also to clarify who can be the executive. That's not there right now. And the reasons why they would do that, they have to cite certain reasons that they would create this, which that's also not in what's on the books right now, if that helps with that piece.
And
I stand corrected and I yield to Ms. Pentar, who is
I'm
immensely more familiar with the reading a bill than I am.
But I am interpreting it differently as well, because the analysis here says existing law authorizes a board of supervisors of any county to, by resolution, establish a Department of Corrections to be headed by an officer appointed by the board, which has jurisdiction over all county functions, personnel, facilities, and so many as the board names in its resolution relating to institutional punishment, et cetera, et cetera. But if you look down here to section 2, subdivision B and A does not apply to either of the following: a county in which the sheriff, as of July 1, 19, is not in charge of, and the sole and exclusive authority to keep the county jail incarcerated. So I think it does apply to our board of supervisors.
I believe that it does not. I believe that
This is a good example.
Yeah, no,
This is good. This is good because we have questions.
if I'm wrong, I'm happy to be corrected, but the way I read this, because I am a little bit familiar with how new bills and the
I
strike
appreciate that.
the strikeouts. So if you notice in the attachment, some of the text is in blue italics and some of it is in black.
Right.
I think that and maybe council can assist here, but I believe the reason why it says existing law authorizes is because this is the draft bill language. Am I wrong, Paul?
She asked me.
No,
Okay, all right.
No.
So wait. All right. So this is Senator Atkins's bill, San Diego.
Mhm.
She means it for the sheriff's department. That's the number one thing, right?
Right.
So look, I'm not the attorney in the room. All I know is it was my understanding that basically, number one, San Diego, and then she also in the fact sheets and everything else talks about Riverside and LA with the increased number of deaths. That's number one. So it applies. Number two, to want to bring this back forward in front of a board of supervisors who, hasn't considered this for 30 some years, since 1993, right? That's the whole point of bringing this back forward, is my understanding. That applies to us, to San Diego, and that to clarify exactly who should be in charge of it, if the board of supervisors says, and the reasons that they're going to move forward with doing so. They have to cite certain reasons. I don't know if that helps, but regardless, it applies to us. It clarifies who should be the EO and the reasons for it, if this thing is approved.
Council? I don't mean to put you on the spot. Could you, your interpretation?
I'm not sure I understood the question. We're talking about whether 26605A in the
What my
Vice Chair
question is,
Pintar was saying that it does not apply to San Diego County.
well, no, I mean, existing law, is that, does that contradict, or is that part of that? Or does this,
Where it says existing law, it's telling you what exists today and then what this bill would add if it were passed.
so existing law does authorize the board of supervisors to establish a Department of Corrections?
Correct.
Okay, so it does.
So this is not new authority. It just puts additional parameters on it.
Okay, so in other words,
That is correct. That is the law. However, subsequent legislation put a pause on this law. This legislation would remove the pause that was subsequently put in place in 1993. So you can have a bill on the books, city, county, federal, and then another piece of legislation can come and say pursuant to this law, that piece no longer applies. So I would just say that Senator Atkins is been a lawmaker in California for some time. She is the highest ranking lawmaker in the state, and I don't believe that she would introduce a bill to change. I mean, to put it bluntly, I think she knows what she's doing here. And the summary that her office put out said that this authority is not in place currently because there is another piece of legislation that put a pause on it. Therefore, that pause needs to be removed in order for county boards to have the authority to do it. So that is my understanding. And I did a little bit of homework on this prior to today prior to our meeting tonight, because I was confused as well by this language. And that is what my research told me. Setting that piece aside, I just wanted to address a couple of other things. I don't know the answer to this, and Mr. Parker, you can maybe add this to your list of questions that you are going to tackle when we're all done saying our piece. What would be the role of civilian oversight under, if you know, what would be the role of civilian oversight under a new and separate body, if should one be created? Okay, and then the other comment I would make is that this bill does not mandate the creation of a board of corrections. It removes the prohibition to creating a county board of corrections. So if we were to move to support the bill and the bill was to pass, it doesn't say that this is happening tomorrow. It doesn't say it has to happen ever. It says if a county board of supervisors decides that they have come to the point where enough of these stated conditions apply, they have the ability to create this board. So I am inclined to support it because I think that it's another tool that becomes available. And I do hear Mr. Wilson's concerns about wanting more time and having additional questions. And I think that it would be part of our responsibility to say, we have some questions. I mean, if we support the introduction of this bill and support it moving forward, there's a lot of time between now and the time that this bill gets passed for adjustments to be made. I mean, this is brand new. So it has to go through committee process at the state level, several committees. And I think we should take it upon ourselves to say what things that we think need to be fixed. And I have my own concerns with some of the language, and I know this won't be completely popular in this room, but I have concerns about fully releasing the CIRB reports only on this basis. And that is that I think that the CLERB report should be released immediately to families as soon as they can become available, as soon as they are complete. I think families should have them. I have no problem with that. The thing I feel, though, is that families in these circumstances are already suffering a lot. And there may be a family that says, I don't want that released to the public. I don't want that report released to the media. And I would just like to know if there's some opportunity that they could say, I don't know, if it's going to cause them more pain. I would think that they should have the ability to say they don't want it released, but I do think they should have it as soon as possible because they want to know what happened to their loved ones. That would be my question and comment as it relates to the release of the CIRB reports. And I will stop talking.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'll just apologizing that this is in addition to all of the things that have happened, that you have to go, this is part of the process. I don't want any more that's in jail or whatever, but I want to make sure things are done right too. So I'm confused because I'm confused tonight, but I whatever we do, we need to get these meetings going. I don't care if we have to do more meetings, more time, virtually or what have you. We need to correct it and make it right as much as we can for the people. That's my, with the language. I've heard that things that takes away privilege, like what you said, it takes, the family, whether they don't want their report released, somebody else can see something about their loved ones that some people may not want that. I've heard of a privilege between lawyer and their client, that would go away, that privileged communication, that all of this would be open to public scrutiny. But I want to, whatever we do, we need to get as much as possible, as fast as possible, try to get some relief for families. So we get it worked out. I know I'm straddling the fence, but let's do what we can. And maybe we should invite, work more with the community. We do this kind of stuff. Just invite them into the, I don't know how to do it. Whatever we can do to bring some.
Thank you. Nadia?
So I want to say that I echo GI's concerns. I do believe that some of those are important questions that should be responded to. I did want to read the part of AB 1185, just so I can ask Paul to clarify for me the difference between the group that is going to be established and what's in AB 1185 that says, this bill would authorize a county to establish a sheriff oversight board to assist the Board of Supervisors with those duties as they relate to the sheriff, either by action of the Board of Supervisors or through a vote of county residents. Existing law requires the Board of Supervisors to supervise the official conduct of all county officers and ensure that they faithfully perform their duties. So my question really is to clarify the difference between the Sheriff Oversight Board as stated in 1185 and the new group that would be conceived, how that would form against what we're doing right now. And then, of course, to just clarify if that's going to create an extra layer, because my problem, what I have found to be the biggest problem is that when we attempt to do oversight, we keep butting up against the idea that there is no policy for that. There is no existing policy. So for me, it's not so much the oversight, but that the policies are not in place to require people to be held accountable. So if we create a different group that now we have to answer to, is that going to fix the problem, which is that there is no accountability that is causing these things to be changed?
Thank you, Nadia. I'm going to make a comment and then I'm going to turn it over to you. So I echo a lot of the things that Mr. Wilson has said, that Ms. Ayub have said as well. I have a lot of questions. First of all, I fully support a lot of this. I think it's important. I want to see changes. I think changes are happening, but again, they happen slowly. This is a new bill. I've been reading the text almost nonstop since last Thursday when I got it. I want you to know that I've taken this very, very seriously. Again, I agree with several of the provisions, but I'd like more time to thoroughly digest it and to have some of my questions answered. I have really questions that could affect this that I need answered. And I feel like I have a responsibility to CLERB and to all the residents of San Diego County to ensure that I understand what I'm supporting. I have a hard time supporting this in its entirety without full knowledge. And maybe we can tell Mr. Parker to go to Sacramento and say we fully support this, this, and this part of it, but we also have concerns about this other portion of it. I do want to mention about the pandemic and about our jail inspections, because it's something that I've discussed with Mr. Parker as well. Two things: we had the pandemic, which we could not do the inspections. And the other thing is we need more staff. We need somebody that is trained to this, and we are getting that staff. And we fully expect within the next few months, I would imagine, couple of months to start that. Gia and I were on the detention facility inspection committee several years ago. It's very important. And so that's my feeling right now. I'm really on the fence, but I really want more information. I just have a hard time supporting something when I don't have all the facts. And now I'll turn it over to Mr. Parker.
Chair Delaney, thank you. Thanks all of you for your questions. And let me see what I can do to try to answer some things. First and foremost, your support of this bill, to be clear, your support or lack thereof is about civilian oversight, what this civilian oversight entity is willing to do, not what the county is willing to do. The county has its own legislative folks who are going to look at this bill and do whatever this county believes is the right thing to do. From a civilian oversight perspective, this is something that you have the ability to do from that perspective only. Is this in the best interest of civilian oversight, in my opinion, for this county? Because as we all know, the civilian oversight is a local thing, and it's up to that jurisdiction to determine what works for that county. What's the right thing to do for that county? So that's number one. I just want to be clear that the county's legislative folks are going to be looking at this as well. This tonight is about civilian oversight and civilian oversight only, and the importance and what you folks think is right. That's number one. Number two, in reference to AB 1185. AB 1185, the whole purpose of that bill was two things, and it's now law and codified, that says, as we all know, the Sheriff's Department, the Board of Supervisors really only has the responsibility, only has the ability, depending on, I'm not the scholar or the lawyer here, but to really just control the budget of the Sheriff's Department. That's it. Nothing really else. That AB 1185 allows for a Sheriff's Department or a Board of Supervisors to create an Office of Inspector General, an OIG, for the purpose of assisting the Board of Supervisors, with providing oversight of and management of the Sheriff's Department. Total Sheriff's Department, not the detention aspect, not the patrol, all of it. It's an Office of Inspector General that allows for that to happen. That was what 1185 did. That is in the law right now. And this Board of Supervisors has the ability, if it so chooses, to create one, if it so chooses. Now, the difference is with this bill is it is the creation of a Department of Corrections. The Department of Corrections will only be responsible for the detention facilities. And they would then have the ability to appoint an executive officer who has specialized knowledge in running that, to take over the role of the sheriff for the detention facilities. In reference to Vice Chair Pintar's question about whether or not we have the ability, because I want to be clear, there might be a little confusion about who's overseeing who. This board is a civilian oversight entity that would provide civilian oversight of a Department of Corrections that is established for the purpose of running a detention facility. That's because that's what these folks who created this back in Sue Quinn's day had the forethought to think that that's something that could happen, and we need civilian oversight. So that's what the civilian oversight, this board would provide oversight of Department of Corrections. Department of Corrections is not the oversight entity. That would be the one running the jails. 1185, kind of an oversight entity with the ability for the Board of Supervisors to have the authority via an OIG to control it, basically, to really investigate, do audit, pattern and practice, all these things that we tried to do earlier. Okay, so that's 2, 3, maybe 4, I don't remember. Regardless, to your point, let's be honest, Mr. Wilson, you said, how do we make San Diego County Sheriff's Department accountable? We can't. We're a civilian oversight entity. We're advisory only. Our main role is to do, in my opinion, to do exactly what we're doing tonight, which is to start the conversation, which is to fall back on the policy and procedure recommendations that we can make, that the department has implemented over 50% of those, to start the public conversation. That is how we can assist the department in providing its best possible services. So I don't know if that answers the question as well, but I do think that that's what you're here to do, at least with me as the executive officer. Yes, ma'am. I'm done. Thank you.
I also want to clarify, because if I misheard some of the comments made, then I apologize, but this is what is being proposed by SB 519 is not an oversight body.
No.
It is complete administration, separate administration of the jail facilities. So law enforcement side, incarceration side, different staff, different head of the department, different skill set would be hired to provide safety within the correctional facilities. I just don't want there to be any confusion about creating an additional level of bureaucracy, because it does not create an additional level. It would separate the two entities. Law enforcement on the street, in the neighborhoods, and then correctional facilities, different staffing, which I think there is a benefit to having a different skill set in the jails. I just want to make sure that that's clear. I hope that.
Mr. Wilson, and do you want to say first?
Mr. Wilson, if I,
No, and this is one of the reasons I'm conflicted. Is there an example where this has already been done? Oh, and I'd love to learn
Yes,
more.
in
about that.
Napa.
Napa County is the only one right now.
Then, and I mean, can you go up there and maybe the vice chair, the chair go up there and find out? Because I mean, I'm very conflicted over this because I don't know a lot about it. And I just will not, I cannot in my own heart or for the people I represent in the county, make a decision on something that I don't understand. And you make a great point. It's not another layer, but another department. You're absolutely right. So, but I would like to hear where it's been successful and how it works.
Keeping in mind, that's Napa County, who will not be subjected to the executive officer having certain background. I don't know what the executive officer up there has, right? But this is really going to make an executive officer of the Department of Corrections who has extensive experience and knowledge running jails and whatnot. I don't know what they have going on in Napa, but also to cite an issue. And I don't know what the issue was in Napa that they did this. But anyway, I want to come back to your final point that you had already addressed, Chair Delaney, but from my perspective as the executive officer for the detention facility inspections, as you know. So we've had that ability to do for 32 years. We've had, at many times during those 32 years, we had two staff members. Sometimes we had three. When I got here in 2017, the first time we had four. We couldn't even keep up with the cases, as evidenced by the fact that we had to dismiss 22 cases of folks who had died. So now this Board of Supervisors has been supportive. We are looking to, and again, it starts to go through the budget process, but we're hopeful that July 1 will be given a position specifically to do these detention facility inspections that we started when I was here the first time, but with COVID and whatnot, had to put on pause, right? So that's where we are. But it's not lost on us that that's a huge responsibility. And that's why we're getting a specific person to do that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Parker. You explained a lot of it. Board? Mr. Wilson?
I would be very comfortable if the vice chair and the chair and Mr. Parker could go and do an on-site visit with Napa and come back and tell us about it.
You want to send me to Napa?
Well,
Here, we'll be able to behave ourselves?
hey, it's,
Okay.
I mean, I really like to see.
Yeah, oh yeah, and we need our counsel with us too.
That's okay. with
Anybody
me,
else want to
but
join us?
I need somebody to, yeah, and far as reading the legislation, I will always bow to Ms. Pintar because you do this. You know,
Appreciate that.
reading legislation, you have to know how to read it.
Right.
All right. And I would feel much more comfortable in having you go through it and bring it back and explain it to me, please.
Okay. So at this point, I appreciate that you would take, give me a vacation up there, a working vacation. But I think right now we need to get back to business here.
I'm happy to make a motion if you would like me to.
If you would like to make a motion.
I move that the board support Mr. Parker going to Sacramento to testify at the Speaker Pro Tem's request. And I move that the board support SB 519.
Okay, is there a second?
We do one at a time.
Well, I think Mr. Parker is already going to be going. He's already going to, so what we need to do now is we're going to be sending him there. How will he be presenting? And that's what the motion has to be. So,
I'm happy to separate the two.
okay,
I move that the board support SB 519.
is there a second? Nadia?
I had my hand out to speak.
Oh, I'm so
Just
sorry.
instead, that's okay.
Council, is it okay to allow her? Okay,
Sorry, Nadia, I didn't see.
sorry.
That's okay. I'm behind you, so I understand. I have to tell you that I came in here fully ready to support this. I looked at it and from hearing after the families, I feel like anything that we can do to alleviate that, because we are sitting on this board, that is our concern. But I do have serious concerns now, and I would like those addressed. And again, I want to reiterate that if we are not addressing the policies that lack accountability within the police department, within the sheriff's department, where we have continuous issues can come up and again and again and again and again, and we say that we have to sustain findings or we have to justify findings because there's no policy in place. I don't see how this bill is going to address that, which I think is the core group of what we should be looking at.
Thank you, Nadia. We don't have a second, but I have a question. Lee, can we continue this until we get more information, but still ask Mr. Parker to go up and we can maybe explain what we like, what we don't like in the bill?
Yes, so as you stated, Paul is going.
Right.
He has authority as designated to him as the spokesperson for CLERB to go up and testify. What he does not have authority to do is to state that CLERB supports or opposes the legislation.
Okay,
If there are particular things you'd like him to represent on behalf of CLERB, then that motion would be appropriate.
okay. Mr. Wilson, did you have your hand up?
I was gonna ask, Ms. Pintar, if she would modify. If you include that in your motion.
Include that Paul carries with him our concerns and questions.
Yes.
Um,
And goes.
I think that's already a foregone conclusion.
I believe what I heard counsel say is that he does not need our authority to go and testify. What he cannot do is go up and say that that the board supports the bill.
Correct.
So seeing as there wasn't a second, I will withdraw my motion. And if I may, I will offer an alternative.
Okay,
I would like to move that the board supports the introduction of SB 519 because we appreciate the intent.
could you start again? I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I'm sort of writing this in my head as I say it. So I move that the board support Senator Atkins' introduction of SB 519. And because we support much of its intent and that we ask Paul to collect questions that we have regarding the legislation and help us get answers to it so that we might be able to act upon it with our full support in the future.
Is there a second? Discussion? I think I would feel more comfortable with you saying that we support the concept. But we have questions that we would like answered before we give our support. Would you be willing to,
So it's saying that we support its introduction doesn't support the bill in its entirety, I don't believe, but I'd rather have a vote on it and
Okay.
then I would offer a separate motion.
All right. So we have a first and a second. Any other discussion? Okay. Val, could you? Thank you.
Unless, does anyone want to speak to the motion? Is that what we need to wait for or no?
No, we're waiting
Okay.
for that.
Okay. Chair Eileen Delaney,
No.
Vice Chair Mary Ann Pintar,
Yes.
Dr. Arlie Brown,
Yes.
Nadia Keen Ayub,
No.
Bonnie Kank,
No.
G.I. Wilson,
No.
Thank you. Motion does not carry. Am I able to make a motion? Okay, I would like to make a motion that we support many of the provisions of the bill, but we would like more information before we give our full support. Is there a second? Can we take a question before we have a second? Okay. Sorry.
Do we have to vote on this tonight?
We don't. I don't know. We can continue it.
There's no requirement to vote on it tonight, but Paul wouldn't be able to relay anything on behalf of CLERB.
Practical reality is the timing.
Right. And that's what I think is bothering a lot of us, but so I'm trying to do something where we can say we support it, but at the same time, we support provisions of it, but we want more information to be able to support it in its entirety. Ms. Pintar? No? Okay.
I would offer an alternative if we don't have a second.
Oh, Nadia? Sorry.
Can we make a motion that says that we support Tony Atkins' efforts and that we would like to see this come to fruition, barring some concerns with some of the current verbiage?
Do I withdraw my motion? Okay, I'm going to withdraw my motion. Nadia, can you repeat that, please?
The CLERB Board of San Diego would like to support Tony Atkins' efforts and would like to see this bill come to fruition, barring some concerns with the current verbiage.
I'll second that.
Mr. Wilson?
I'm still at the same place I was before. I don't understand this. And I would be very comfortable with Paul going to Sacramento and with you all going to Napa, coming back from your fact finding and tell us what's all involved and how this thing may play out. I'm just not comfortable with not knowing all the facts and how it may work. And I am very interested that it is in place somewhere. So I think it's very, very important that we gain that insight, that information.
Council, can we continue this, but give him Mr. Parker, the ability to, for example, I think we all agree on the transparency, but we want to see a little bit, we want the families to have input in that as well. And other portions of it. So how can we do this and continue it at the same time, or vote on the entire?
I'll answer your question. There's a pending motion there.
Oh,
that
I'm
was
sorry.
seconded.
Nadia, would you? Oh, Ms. King seconded. Okay. I'll call for the vote then. Or what? Hold on. We want to get this right.
I would like to ask Ms. Keen Ayub if she would consider modifying the language slightly.
Of course.
What do you have in mind?
That CLERB supports Senator Atkins' efforts to increase transparency and outcomes at our jail, and would like to revisit support for her bill pending answers to some outstanding
I
questions.
like that.
Amen.
I'll third it.
But she has to.
Oh, are you, Nadia? Are
She
you
has to
okay?
agree to
Are
it.
you okay with the amendment?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect.
And
All right.
Ms.
We have,
Pink will need to approve of the.
Ms.
amendment
Kank,
of
are you
motion.
good with seconding that? Okay, very good. All right.
That's why we have.
I know.
Yeah.
All right. Any other comments?
No.
All right. May you read the roll call for the vote, please?
Chair Eileen Delaney,
Yes.
Vice Chair Marianne Pintar,
Yes.
Dr. Arlie Brown, Nadia Kinayu,
Yes.
Bonnie Kank,
Yes.
and G.I. Wilson.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. You know, just for the public to know that, we really care. And sometimes these things take a lot of conversation. But our hearts are all there. And
Sorry.
It's okay.
One more thing. I don't know how the process of collecting the questions and concerns that were raised, that Paul can,
I think
I don't know, do you want to put them in a letter to the senator's office? Or they come from the minutes, or how does that process happen?
could we tell them that we will get them? I mean, this is a long process. So how about we at our
Got
next meeting, we put this on the agenda and discuss, or no? Yes?
Whatever you'd like.
Yeah.
Whatever
Concerns?
you'd like.
Or do you want, or would it be more efficient
I-
if we just sent our?
I think
want
we
the-
just
I want
send
the
our,
public though to know. I want them to hear what our concerns are and I want them to be part of the conversation. So that's why I'm saying I know it's takes a while, but same time, it might be a good idea to do it in our meeting.
Whatever works for you. If you want it on the agenda for the May 9th meeting, we'll certainly do that. Not a problem whatsoever.
Yeah.
So we can have that discussion further.
Okay.
And then, yeah, I'll just leave it. Like when I'm up there tomorrow and the next day, I'll try to get as much information as I
Absolutely.
can.
That'd be
and
terrific.
bring that back for the May 9th meeting as well.
And members of the public, this will give you more time to read the text as well. If you have concerns and things that you want us to specifically look at and ask questions about, please come to our next meeting, or you can send them to Mr. Parker ahead of time so that we can digest those as well and get as much information as possible to make informed decisions. Anything else before I adjourn the meeting? We can stay a little bit longer if you'd like. Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you.